not necessarily accompanied with any text at all, but has become part of iconography that is through the ages important. So the woman clothed with the sun is especially important person from Revelation represented in many different ways. So we have, first of all, again, from the Bamberg apocalypse, right? We have this particular scene. So the dragon, this is in Revelation chapter 12. The dragon stood in front of the woman who was about to give birth so that it might devour her child the moment he was born. So here we have juxtaposed, and this is repeated in further scenes, but also very important. You'll see her iconography of being clothed with the sun, with the stars behind her, and the moon at her feet. And remember that, as that will be repeated again and again from the text. The child here seems already born, right? So here already figured as this small human standing next to her and the beast awaiting from the Bamberg apocalypse. This now, fast forward many centuries, right? This is coming from a post-Renaissance style, borrowing so much from what we know of Italian Renaissance painting. So this is the woman clothed in the sun, flees the persecution of the dragon. So you see the beast lurking on the bottom amidst the turmoil in the dark, and then movement to the light as her child is being taken. Her child was snatched up to God, right? So rescued immediately, taken out of her hands and up to God and to his throne. And you'll see again, behind her is the aura of the sun. Across her head is the halo of stars. And below amidst the cloud is the moon at her feet. So this is quite a different representation, but the same story being told now with borrowing from the kind of textures, features, and representation of angels, et cetera, that we usually associate with Renaissance paintings. Of course, this is another famous one, another figure that becomes a quite major artist for the apocalypse, which is William Blake. You may see this within popular representation of the apocalypse. If you just Google anything like Whore of Babylon painting, the things you'll come up with mostly will be the commentaries of Beatus, Dürer, and William Blake. Those are the ones that are usually showing up the most in representation. And here again, this is the woman. The dragon stood in front of the woman who was about to give birth so that it might devour her child the moment he was born. And here we have, again, the juxtaposition of light and dark in this moment of conflict in the book of Revelation. And of course, William Blake has been picked up in popular culture today. I don't know if you know, but his dragon and his painting of this dragon and with his back to us has become associated with other figures of horror that lend itself really well with this dreamlike nightmare illustration of this particular scene. Moving forward in time, here's Redon, who's in a very different manner, right? Not quite so literal, showing the woman clothed in the sun. She is about to give birth, it seems, maybe one way of interpreting that. But really the focus is on light and dark, and not necessarily the literal representation of all the different details of that particular passage. But in this sketch, right, capturing a particular moment, anticipation, waiting, and then the play of light across her face and her figure, and part of it in darkness. Here, a woman painter, finally, illustrator in 1904, a woman clothed with the sun. And here we see quite differently represented the reflection, it seems, in the water of the moon at her feet. And the glow of the sun actually seems to come from within her or amongst her robes. So quite literally a beautiful interpretation of what being literally clothed with the sun might be like, and the stars as part of crowning her hair in this representation. And this is one of my favorites. This is actually sculptural, and this is at the Our Lady of Angels Cathedral in Los Angeles. But this is a 3D representation of that particular person, in which you have, if you think about the way it's working as the day passes, right? She is standing on this platform with a aperture, an opening behind her head, so that during the day, she is literally clothed with the sun shining down through that aperture through her whole person. But then, and at her feet is the moon in the arch, right, and in the shadow and play of light, because of the way it's built, right, on what she's standing. So the light will look like the crescent moon. And when night comes, then she'll have the stars behind her head, right? So quite a beautiful use of nature and the sky to represent this. And there's just tons of beautiful sculptural artwork as part of that cathedral, also the doors of the cathedral in brass, and this representation. And she, in a hands forward, perhaps of supplication or otherwise, with her face, the artist has said, you know, they wanted to show something that was a mixture of where you could not identify necessarily ethnicity, identity, all of those markers, so that she then can become a universal figure in that way, borrowing from different. So her clothing is ambiguous of where she is from, so can be identified and relatable to anyone. And then the play of nature around her to represent this woman. Here is another representation from Los Angeles, but understanding the woman clothed in the sun as embodied by the Virgen Guadalupe. So part of a long history of that particular iconographic interpretation of that woman becoming symbolized in the Virgin of Guadalupe from Spain into what was called the New World, right? Into Mexico and indigenous understanding of that figure. And then interpreted in Los Angeles as part of, right, Angelenos culture, Latine culture in California and Mexico, and part of activist culture as well. So here is a mural from Boyle Heights in Los Angeles as well. So you'll see, right, the many myriad ways in which this person can be interpreted. From just those verses in Revelation chapter 12, having these afterlives, right, in so many different ways. Here, this is AI slop, right, just to show you a different representation. I found this, actually, someone went and tried to create this with AI, of what, you know, can be created without human hands. I personally hope that this is not where we're headed in the afterlife of this particular figure. Compare this with the beautiful things that we have just seen.